Okay, well, welcome to the podcast. I'll just give a quick intro and you can correct me or extend it if you feel the need. So, you're a veteran of the U.S. Navy. You're an author of two books, I believe, correct? The Mysteries at the Wyndham Inn and a bestseller, 2,442 Steps to Crazy, The Beginning. You're a medium, a Native American holy man, and I just kind of worded it as a hauntings investigator. Did you want to expand on any of those or add anything to that?
Yeah, I've written more than two books.
Okay.
Normally, what I write is books and series, um, and I don't do haunting investigations.
No. So like you don't chase down like poltergeists, or people don't reach out to you if they're having issues with things like that, or
Well, there's a pretty substantial difference between investigating hauntings and removing darkness.
okay.
And
So
I focus on solving problems.
okay. So where did this all start for you? I guess when did you join the Navy? Did you know you had any kind of ability like this at that time? Just kind of what's a brief story in your life and how you found yourself doing this.
Well, I've always had the gifts since I was a kid. I always remember seeing things and so on. Joining the Navy is a entirely different discussion. I was 17, and it's what I needed to do.
Yeah. So how did you recognize the gifts I guess, as a young man?
Well, when you see things that nobody else can see, and hear things, and you see ghosts and spirits and dark entities and gargoyles, and run the gamut. Um,
Yeah.
you Not too many people are willing to believe you, but such is the life.
Yeah, you always hear people say that young children, a very young age might have, some ability like that. You always hear that urban legend, and then as they get older it disappears. So I guess, do you feel like there's some truth to that?
I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't spend much time trying to analyze other people's abilities, when they happen, how they happen. You know,
Yeah.
Try to stay in my own lane.
Yeah. So how do you think that works? Do you think that you can just kind of see through a veil of reality, maybe another dimension, or do you have any idea how this all works?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
And do you want to expand on that?
Um, well, it's kind of a big question. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot in that answer. I don't know where I would begin.
Okay. So I guess if somebody senses a dark energy in their home, how would you approach that in getting it out or recognizing that there is something there?
Yeah. Yeah, I got to tell you, Logan, I don't know how to answer. I don't know how to answer that kind of question.
Yeah.
There's a lot to it. It isn't, you open up a box of Wheaties and pour some milk in a bowl.
I hear you.
It's a complex issue. This isn't, ghost adventures where they, bang on doors and run around with cameras and
Yeah.
hope something makes a noise, or, throws something, right? I get called in
So
when they're after they've already uncovered all this crap, and they're trying to get something out of a house, or a person's possessed, or land needs to be cleared, or dark side doesn't want to give something up.
is it fairly common? Like, do you get quite a bit of these calls and go on quite a bit of these, I guess, investigations or however you'd word them?
So your first question is it common? The answer is yes. Spirits are around everybody. Okay,
Hmm.
good spirits and bad spirits, right? Everybody, everybody, no exceptions, right? Um, how often I do this, I don't have a gauge, because I don't know what others do. I
Hmm.
just do what I can when people reach out. Sometimes I do the work, sometimes I pass, but for the most part, the important thing for everybody to understand is you can do the same things I do. You just have to have faith and belief in something greater than you, and greater than the darkness you're trying to overcome.
Hmm. So do you think it's good and evil in the biblical sense, angels and demons, or do you think it's
Answer is yes.
uh, it is for sure? Hey,
Yes.
you don't believe? I mean, some people say, well, it's just extraterrestrials in another,
That's
you know, in
an
another
entirely
dimension,
different conversation.
right? Do you think that that exists as well?
Yes.
Like that there's a different dimensions?
Yes.
Um,
Multiple.
and multiple dimensions, and would you say that the good and evil, angels and demons, applies to their world, whatever, however you define that
I
as
don't know.
well? Don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm busy enough in this one.
Yeah, no kidding. So how does it how does it change your view of this world? Like, you are a Christian by faith, if I understand correctly. Have you always been a Christian?
Yes.
Yeah, and primarily because I guess you recognize this maybe more than the average person. I guess you say, like, I walk through life and I've never seen anything like that,
Yes, you have.
like you've mentioned.
Yes. Yes, you have.
Okay, so how so? How would you describe that for
So
me?
people like you see things and they don't recognize it as not of this plane, not alive. Happens all the time.
Hmm. Is there any examples that come to mind that might ring a bell with just what someone thinks an ordinary person might or resonate with?
I don't understand the question.
So, like, are you talking when you think you see someone in the corner of your eye and you look, there's nobody there, or like what would be an example of something that maybe
that's
I've
a
seen?
good example, but
Yeah.
not the one I was referring to. You yourself have seen spirits that look like an absolutely living person, and you've paid them no never mind.
Okay, so they walk among us, to say the least. I guess they blend right in and hidden in plain sight.
Well, remove hidden, and
Hmm.
they are
Yeah.
at times very much in plain sight, especially during tragedies and traumas and so on.
Right. Um, so I guess you have had what a poltergeist experience. How would you describe a poltergeist? What is that? I'm not even sure what that would be.
Well, what's your understanding of a poltergeist?
You know, I think of the movie, and that was there that true story movie about that lady that had that being or whatever in her house, basically harassing her and causing her harm, and doing physical things in that household. Whether or not that's a demon or a poltergeist, I wouldn't be able to differentiate between what a demon and a poltergeist is. I kind of view them one and the same.
Well, if you met a demon, you would know the difference between a demon and a poltergeist.
Hmm.
You would know it instantly. A
Hmm.
demon would make you wish you spent a lifetime preaching the gospel.
Hmm.
A poltergeist will just piss you off, right?
Hmm.
Scare you, annoy you. Well, what's the difference? Well, it's a huge difference. So let's just stay with the poltergeist. Poltergeist is nothing more than a ball or a collage of of negative energy. So the best example I like to use is, parents have a fight in their house or kids have a fight and they yell and scream at each other and create all this negative energy, right? I hate you, right? You go down that path of the opposite of happy, the opposite of love. Well, um, all that darkness that your dark energy that you're spewing has to go somewhere, right? And when people are in their house, where's it go? Usually on their kitchen floor or their living room floor, and it just sits there. And over time, enough energy, dark energy, negative energy, I should say, not dark energy, is collected. And I like to compare it to a tumbleweed, right? Have you ever seen
Hmm.
a tumbleweed form? No. It
No.
starts out with a single stick, and then another stick bumps into it, and then the wind picks up, blows it around, and now you have 1,000 sticks or 1,000 negative arguments, right? That create
Hmm.
energy. And as science has proven, energy never disappears, it just changes form. Okay. So your verbal words are energy. Okay. And when you do it in hate and anger, you create a tremendous negative pool of energy that came from you is turned into negative energy and it has no place to go. So it slops on the floor or wherever you were during this, during that time. And as time happens, the more energy it gathers, eventually it creates its own conscience. Okay? Again, think of science. A single cell, you pick the, you pick the entity, right? It grows from one cell to two cells and then just keeps growing until it develops a conscience. Human baby is a great example, right? For the day of conception, the baby doesn't have a conscience, but it's growing. Okay, so you look at dark energy as the same way, or I should say negative energy, right? So in the end, for me, a poltergeist is nothing more than a collection of negative energy that developed to a point where it can start causing havoc and getting well past just you kind of walk through a room and it's like, man, that feels weird. That doesn't feel good, or man, it's thick in here, it's heavy in here, or there's not as much light in a particular room or area of a building or house or home property, right? So, depending on how much negative energy people have fed it, depends on how big it gets and how big it can get. But it's not a demon. It's just a matter of it's just a collection of pissed off, angry, negative energy.
Yeah, that was my next question, was that, would abusive homes or, say prisons or places like that where a lot of violence has happened and there's been a lot of negative energy, are those places more prone to something like this happening?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
So, because you always walk into a house where you hear something has happened and the hair on the back of your neck stands up sometimes for no good reason, and you just get that feeling. So that could be maybe some of this present energy.
And for the purpose of this conversation, yes, but it's not for no good reason. That's your spirit warning you that something's here, to be aware.
Okay. And so how do you rid a space of something like that?
Well, depending on the person doing the work, you can call in anything from Archangel Michael to, just regular angels, to just pure white light beings, and they'll come in and round it up, collect it, and get it out of here.
So, do you believe in like burning sage and cleansing houses and those kinds of acts that people do if they move into a new house, these little rituals that people have?
So I don't know about the rituals you're talking about. Yes, I'm a huge sage guy, but it's not just sage. Great Spirit gave us 4 elements to use: sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and tobacco. Okay. Today's modern day tobacco is kind of leaf grown. In the old days, it was the inside of a bark, the inside of a tree, the inside of the bark of a tree. But those are the elements that Great Spirit gave us to help neutralize negative energy. For the most part, if you blow sage, cedar, sweetgrass, and tobacco on a demon, he's going to inhale. All right, may annoy him a little bit, but that's about it. At least in my experiences. Okay, I mean, it can help reduce the amount of energy around a trickster or a demon, but it's not really meant to light up a sage stick and chase a demon and down your block. That's not going to work. Poltergeist, you might have a better shot at it, but it goes to intent and where you are personally. If you're kicking out all this fear and panic, well, all you're doing is kind of feeding the dark energy what it's looking for. So.
Mm-hmm. So you walk into a house where someone feels a bunch of dark energy. What do you do in that home to help this person?
Well, I got to make sure I caveat this with I'm different, a lot different, very unique compared to a lot of the other folks out there, because I listen to how they do things, and they all have their own spirit guides around them and angels at times. It depends on how much power your soul can bring to bear. I like to use the phrase that I'm really just a hollow bone, a conduit to move God's light, the light of Christ, through me to where it needs to be, whether it needs to be aimed at darkness or at a living person for healing or whatever the case may be. So for me, it's more about being present, either mentally or physically present, and bringing the forces that to bear that are needed to solve the problem. Okay. And again, you know, you've got your standard things you do to protect yourself and go at something. You're always approaching from the right, and there's a lot of things you're cautious of, but no two removals have been the same. At least not for me. So some have been relatively easy. Some of them have been, have been some work. All right. But at the end of the day, I feel I'm just a conduit with the ability to be that hollow bone to move angels, God's light, great spirits, energy, whatever it takes to remove the darkness.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any, I guess, notable experiences? I know that I read on you that your life has been put in danger before doing this.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Do you want to talk about those
My life
experiences?
is constantly in danger. I mean,
Yeah,
constantly.
yeah.
It is. That's the nature of being a spiritual warrior at the level that I'm asked to be a spiritual warrior, right?
Mm-hmm.
The dark side doesn't want anybody's white light shining, so they want to go after it. People like me in particular, darkness isn't too fond of me. So energies that are not sophisticated or, packing a real big punch, for the most part, tend to flee when I'm around. They do everything they can to hide, mask themselves, dress up in something that makes them look normal for the spirit world.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get into the real dark stuff, the real heavy, um, you know, devil type shit, uh, you better be mindful that your life is constantly at risk. Now, for me, I couldn't care less. I get called back to God. For me, it's the sooner the better, right? So I'm here
Mm-hmm.
as long as God tells me to be here. I've been dead before. It is what it is. So I've always said it's easy to die. It's hard. It's hard to live. Living's not easy, especially if you do some of the stuff that I do. But so I don't have a fear of dying, and I don't fear darkness. The only thing that to kind of go down the line, every time I go out there and commit to this spiritual warfare, you put your life on the line. Most people don't really recognize it, but I'll tell you a story that, um, if you're on this side doing the work, you get it. For those who don't have the true understanding, they may question it. A friend of mine did 20 years in the Navy, medic, right? He's a paranormal investigator. That's what he does. He's different than what I do. Okay, I don't go out looking for ghosts. I just open my eyes and I see them. It's not hard. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so in my book, The Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn, my friend did 2 investigations into that property. In one of my dreams, I had seen that this property, in the dream log that I wrote out, says that 3 investigators will have to surrender their lives before the final secrets of the Wyndham Inn will be told. Okay. Now, this is a couple of years ago when I had that dream, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I had finished writing A Date with Suicide, which addresses the behind the scenes why veterans are killing themselves, and it kind of takes on that battle. So when I finished that book, the deal was I was going to reach out to him. We were going to connect. And I reached out for a month and a half. Never heard back from him. Got a little odd, but didn't really pay it any. Never mind. And then I saw a post online where there was a memorial service for him, and the whole thing snapped like this. So I had my suspicions, but I didn't want to use my own ability, if you will, to come to a conclusion. So I sought out some of the advisors that I have around me, and I asked them, what happened? And they said, yeah, the Wyndham Inn, something from there attached him, along with some other investigations he was doing. He wasn't clearing himself well, and he had other issues. And again, that's kind of always the underlying thing. In book 2 of the Mysteries of the Wyndham Inn series, there's a character that I titled the Grumpy Old Man. And the Grumpy Old Man is a ghost that walks back and forth in front of the post office, which is right next to the Wyndham Inn. These are real properties, okay? And when I found out how he got there, man, it was like, wow, okay. So, like my friend who's no longer alive, this grumpy old man was bitching and moaning at the main character, and a piece of darkness latched on because he was opening himself up to everything by his actions and what he was doing. He created so much negative energy around him, it was easy for darkness to grab a hold of him. Well, wrong place, wrong time. And he, you know, a piece of darkness locked onto him, and he started having a heart attack about 10, 12 feet from his 1970s, gas guzzling monstrosity of a car. And he made it to the front seat, slumped in it, reaching for his heart medication, and died. Right? That ghost paces back and forth in front of the window men every single day, still pissed off, still spewing out anger, okay, because his spirit was left, but his soul was taken, okay? And that's the dangers that anybody doing this work faces. When people mess around with Ouija boards, first thing I say to them is, did you set sacred space? Did you say only white light beings may enter? Did you stand in the light of Christ when you decided to play with this game and open up portals to anywhere in the universe? Literally, not just hell and all that purgatory kind of crap, but you're opening up portals from anywhere in the universe. If you don't have to believe me that the universe is infinite. Just go outside and look, and you tell me how big it is, and then pull out a Ouija board and say, "All right, all of you, come say hello." Right? You have no idea what's moving around. You have no idea what's looking for you. And the way I like to kind of say that is, a light like mine will shine for great distances, like a lamp in the middle of the ocean. Okay, it can be very visible. Most people, their light isn't as big as mine. And again, it's because I have a lot of angels around me and the nature of what I do. All right. But when a piece of darkness can see your light, it wants your energy, period. So when you invite it in by, these things people do, Ouija boards or whatever, you're playing Russian roulette with your soul and your spirit.
Mm-hmm. So the Wyndham Inn, you wrote that book. It's a fictional novel based around that property, or is it's all true stories in there?
So my position is everything I write is true. Okay.
Right.
Now you got to caveat that. There's literary license that I bring to the table. Okay. And storytelling is storytelling. Okay. Mm-hmm. But the heart of the story is as real as it gets. The main character, Master Gary. Listen, I grew up with him. Right. When we went to high school, he went to one high school, I went to another, and that's where we kind of, didn't spend as much time as we had, the prior 5 years. Out of the blue, a couple of years ago, he showed up on his motorcycle and, started telling me about this cat that would attack him when he was living in the Wyndham Inn. Okay. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't attack him when he was alive. It would attack him when he was asleep and when he was, dreaming, and he would wake up and try to fight this cat off, and then there would be no cat there, but he'd have the scratches from it. Okay. So his brother is a character in it, and he's very real, and so is his girlfriend. And the narrator is an actual ghost who's been inside this property for, almost 300 years. So when I say I've got a ghostwriter on this book, I mean a ghost. I'm doing the writing. She's doing the talking.
So just give me the history of the Wyndham Inn and what makes this property unique in the way of all this dark energy. What's the story with it?
I can answer that.
That's the book.
With one
That's
picture.
The book. Yeah.
Right?
So the cat, yeah, in front of the
see the cat?
Yeah.
Okay. You see how he's dressed up? He's dressed up like a trickster. Okay.
So is the Wyndham Inn used, like, where is it located?
It's literally at the intersection of two major roadways in Wyndham, Connecticut, in the village of Wyndham Center. Okay. Everything I describe in the book is literally there right now. And if you want to Google a picture of the Wyndham Inn, that's what's going to come up. Okay. This is a caricature of a photograph I took.
Yeah.
All right. And this window right here, I posted online and said, hey, why don't you guys tell me how many how many ghosts you see in that window, right? Now the answers have come back anywhere from 12 to 6 to 12. Okay. I know how many are there, right? Freaked the hell out of some people, right? But TAPS did an investigation on this building, and their position was there's nothing here, and I laughed because they're pretty good folks, right?
Mhm.
But the thing is that, you know, ghosts are not supposed to be visible to the living. It's just not how universal law works. Okay. That's a piece of it. A bigger piece is really simple. When a ghost shows himself, especially at a place like the Wyndham Inn, it's not just showing itself to you, it's showing itself to the darkness that still wants to capture its energy, its spirit, and or its soul, or pieces of its soul, depending on the spirit or ghost that's at the particular property. So when ghosts show themselves, they're setting themselves up for danger as well, right? Otherwise, why wouldn't ghosts just be as visible as everybody else, right?
Hmm. So, I guess soul versus spirit. You kind of mentioned that they're different things, and how would you describe each of them?
Well, give me some background on you or your audience. Are you, do you have any faith? Do you believe in,
Yeah,
anything
but
greater than you?
later in life, yeah, absolutely. But was not raised. I did go to like Lutheran Sunday school as a young kid. Did not stick with church. Kind of come back into my faith a bit later in life, and I do not go to church every Sunday, but it's something that I explore. But no, not a heavily Christian family. Um, I
Well, Matt,
guess you could
what do
say.
do you believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy
Yep.
Ghost?
Yep.
Okay, what's the difference?
I think they're all one spirit. I'm not sure, but I think
It's
they're
all a
all
piece of
one.
one, right?
Yeah.
It's all part of one. So we're
Okay.
made up of our soul, our spirit, and the simplest way to do it, we have the four corners of our existence: our physical, our mental, our spiritual, and our emotional bodies. Those are the four corners of our existence. Okay. Now, your soul and your spirit are two different things. When I was in the Navy, I got the submarine that I was on. We were doing some stuff in some places that don't get talked about much, and I got run over and crushed between a submarine and a surface ship. Um, when I was about a foot and a half underwater, I watched and I could hear the two boats coming together and crunching my body. And I said, "This is gonna suck." And that's the last thing I remember, looking up through a foot and a half of water until I'm, floating about 30 feet above the boat, watching them, pull me out of the ocean. Okay. When people suffer trauma, your soul will stay with you. Sometimes pieces of it will fragment and go other places, but your spirit, more times than not, will leave your body to preserve itself so that the physical body can absorb and deal with the trauma, and the spiritual body does not. Okay. So when you
Mhm.
talk to people that go through trauma, and they say, you'll hear it time and time again, literally in passing, they'll say, "It felt like I was out of body. It was almost as if I was watching myself." Okay. When I hear those words, and for me it's a lot different, because when people talk, these bubbles pop up and I see what they're saying, and if they're bullshitting me, the bubbles don't come up. All right.
Mhm.
So when people say things like, "Yeah, I have this happened," and it's almost like my body wasn't, or my mind wasn't. It was like I was somewhere else, watching myself. I could feel, so I can see what they're saying. Okay, that's when your spirit flees your body to protect itself and allows the physical body to deal with the trauma.
Right. So was that the injury that ended your career in the Navy, that submarine and ship collision?
Well, you would think so, right?
Yeah, no
30
kidding.
hours. I don't remember the next 30 hours, and I climbed out of my rack and um, you know did what we do, and I think it was a year and a half later. The injuries, they couldn't. It's a long story, but at the end of the day, no, I dealt with a lot more. But that's
Mhm.
kind of the easiest path to understand what happens to guys in the military, or at least what
But
happened to me. You know.
you were able to work for a bit, but those injuries you carried with you for a while before you realized that these are substantial. Sounds
Yeah, I
like.
mean,
Is that
you
correct?
got
Yeah.
the physical injuries are one thing, but the
Yeah.
PTSD is another, and some brain trauma
Yeah.
and so on. It isn't something a lot of times that is very visible at the onset. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so if you tweak, and we're talking 40 plus years ago here, so
Mm-hmm.
technology then wasn't even remotely what it is today. I mean, I've recently seen an MRI where I'm not going to say who, but there was many strokes that 5 years ago, the technology wasn't there to see this level of degree in the brain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So um, look, the Navy did what they thought was right with me, but I never got taken care of, and things got worse.
Yeah, unfortunately, sounds like it's a pretty common story, especially, I mean, in that era, PTSD wasn't even talked about. I mean, they had no understanding of PTSD. Um, you probably didn't either at the time, maybe until later in life. Did you realize that you had PTSD and try to deal with it, or what was that like for you?
Well, I know a number of years after I was out of the service, I said something's wrong, and I went and sought out help myself. Okay, um, and then I don't know, about 8 years down the road, um, the VA said, "Listen, man, you got severe PTSD," and I said, "No, I don't. Fuck you, not happening." And I fought him for 18 months, and then I finally said, "All right, how do we fix this?" And they said, "We don't. You're stuck with it." I didn't like that answer either, So I said, "Well, I'm going to find out a way to deal with this because I'm not dealing with these drugs and all this crap for the rest of my life." And it's part of the path where I found my way down my spirituality, and I really embraced, started then to embrace my Native Americanism, and I resurrected all of that stuff that I remember from a kid, and reached out to some people, and read a ton, learned a lot, and then went into practice. Um, but there's some factors in there that kind of steer our lives, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
and we're supposed to be going down this path, and the traumas you had weren't enough to get you there, you know,
Yeah.
God will give you a few more traumas to get you on your course.
Yeah. So you think that, the drugs and all that stuff aside, you definitely think it was your spiritual side that pulled you through, I guess, the PTSD the most?
Well,
And I guess,
PTSD will always be with me. It's a
Mhm.
matter of understanding how to manage it. Okay. Anxiety, for example, there's so far too many of us, especially vets, on anxiety drugs. And I'd had enough of it because it didn't really do what it was supposed to do, and so on and so on. So eventually I started meditating. And when I did, it ended my anxiety. So anytime a bout of anxiety starts creeping up, I immediately go to breathing techniques and, bring in light and do all these things that I do to ensure that the anxiety is pushed back. Okay. But it's
Mhm.
always there. Triggers are there. Okay. I don't go to fireworks. I don't, I mean, I go to a gun range, but it's weird how it's different. Okay. I can't stand crowds. Right. And especially for what I do, because there's so much energy buzzing around, and so on. So a lot of the triggers, a lot of the baggage is still there. So you just learn to manage what you're dealing with. Now I've had some guys that are doing the psychedelics. Okay, some guys I served with. Okay, and they're swearing by them that it's helped them with their PTSD, their anxiety, and some other things. But I watched them carefully, and they are having success with it. But the personality changes that happen when you suffer trauma, when you have PTSD, it's always there. It's kind of like a demon, dark energy, right? The dark angel on your shoulder, the devil on your shoulder, I should say. That's whispering in your ear. You know. I don't. I'm not a drug addict, or I don't. Never had to do that recovery stuff. Okay, but people tell me that voice that's trying to take you down that path is no different than an addiction, right?
Mhm.
I'm just kind of taking the spiritual part and kicking it over to addiction.
Yeah, so your mindset's, I mean, obviously you probably have a great deal of discipline to keep yourself in a healthy mental space. Sounds like you deal with
Yeah, listen,
a
unless
lot
you're
of,
Sam Malone and want to buy Cheers, it's probably not a wise idea to be a drunk and buy a bar, right?
no,
No, not if you're
no.
trying not to be a drunk, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
Yeah.
saying people can't do it. I'm just saying the kind of rule number one: stay out of those places, right?
Yeah.
If you're a drug addict, don't go marching down crack alley, with a lighter and a spoon or pipe or what. I'm not sure how that all works, but you get my meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to the Wyndham Inn because I think this is absolutely interesting. Do you just can you just describe some of the lore around it, how it became to be such a haunted place, if you want to call it haunted? Um, what is the Wyndham Inn? It's just a regular hotel where it's so old, so many people have died in it, or how is there such a spiritual presence in that
Yeah,
building?
there's a long historical track record that dates back, 300 years plus, on that particular property. There were buildings there before the Wyndham Inn, which was built, and the plaque on the building says it was built in 1783. I think it was built sooner, but that's my opinion. So the property, when the Mohican, when Chief Uncas granted this part of Wyndham to settlers, um, he again, this is my understanding. He warned them not to cross this particular line, and that line is right where the Wyndham Inn is right now. Okay, and there used to be a giant rock that sat on this property, and these people that came in got rid of it, and so on. When they did, they opened up the portal that rock was protecting. It's in I touch on it in the book, but in book 3 or 4, it'll it'll dive deeper into the story long before the settlers disturbed the ground. Okay, but at the end of the day, this story focuses around um, Elizabeth Shaw, who had as a older teenager, was hanged not once but twice. Okay, and this is like 40, 50 years after the Salem witch trials were ended by all the governors of the colonies. They said no more burning people at the stake. All right, so they had to find another way to get rid of this person. Now the story is that this young kid had a baby out of wedlock, and she left the baby in the woods, and the villagers condemned her for it, gave her a flash trial, and said, we're going to hang you. Okay. Her father, on the other hand, had ridden to the governor, got a pardon, and was on his way back. And he was within musket shot when he saw the noose on the second hanging stop twitching. So he dropped from his horse and cursed the land and the people. Okay.
Hmm.
Ironically, so did Miss Elizabeth. Okay. She let out a pretty good curse on both hangings. Right? So I was on a radio interview last week where this Paul Wayno in the morning in romantic Willimantic, right? 5 miles from where the Wyndham Inn is. It's a museum now. It's closed, but they're turning it into a museum. So I think it stopped. It went from an inn to a apartment house, with 8 or 10. I don't know how many apartments in it, but guys I knew lived there for many years. Anyway, when I was at this radio interview, Wayno says to me, he says, "So do you know the Shaws that are here now?" And I said, "No, I've never really talked to them." And he goes, "I was talking to her the other day, and she said to me that Miss Elizabeth, the girl in your book, was right up here on High Street recently." And I said, I mean, I don't know of that, but it doesn't surprise me because in the book, I bring in Father Leroy, who is the 80-year-old priest at the Catholic Church, St. Joseph's Church. And in St. Joseph's Church is an angel I've seen, virtually my whole life. Okay. Well, the angel and Miss Elizabeth kind of go hand in glove. That's a long story, but I write about it and tell about it in the books.
Fascinating. So, how did she survive the first hanging, if you don't mind me asking?
So I'll give you that answer right after you read
Okay.
the book.
Okay, it's all in the book. No, I'm definitely gonna check this out. It's I love these kinds of stories. I think they're absolutely fascinating. So you've been to this building many times, um, I'm assuming, and felt a ton of energy and seen things yourself.
Yes.
And you say that the a certain spirit or ghost there communicated to you just kind of the stories that occurred there over the years, or what were they telling you that you felt the need to write a book? Is it just the history of the building they're passing to, and
So
just
everything
details
I
of that?
write kind of touches on faith and, the spirit world and what I do, especially as a Native American, right? Because, Native American stuff is really, really cool. But what most people don't
Mm-hmm.
understand is that the heart of Christianity and the heart of Native American beliefs kind of walk hand in glove. The Holy Trinity was believed in by Native Americans, for tens of thousands of years before the settlers, stepped foot on this continent, right? Um, so those similarities all by themselves are striking. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know, people say to me, "Well, why do you burn sage, man? That's just voodoo." I'm like, really? Every time I go to church, I see a priest stand up there with his, you know, holy smoke. Is that what he's doing? You go to a wedding or you go to a funeral. What's in his little ringy dingy dingy there that's putting
Mm-hmm.
smoke out? What's all that about? So you want to tell me that you can, you scarf at Native Americans and sage, but right? Again, sage has been around a hell of a lot longer than the Christian faith. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you got to wonder sometimes what things were adopted by who, right? Start with Christmas and kind of work your way backwards if you want, right? A
Mm-hmm.
pagan holiday. I mean, it's fun to really study religion, but one thing I won't do is bash it. There's just no point. There's plenty of people out there that do that. For folks who are trying to find their religious path, their spiritual path, listen, I tell you all the time, Christ is in you, Great Spirit is in you. Walk your path. Okay, you don't
Mm-hmm.
need somebody else to tell you what the Bible says. If you want to read the Bible, read the Bible. If you want to do what I do, go out into nature and listen to the world, listen to the earth, feel
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. It'll do wild things to you. And if you don't think you can listen to the birds and receive messages, it's really simple. Just quiet your mind and listen, right? Now, when you say a bird told me, it sounds crazy. But when you hear a bird chirping, and then you have this thought that's like resonates with you, where'd that come from? Did you create it, or did it come from the spirit world, right? Or did it come from the bird? You know, I know this. I've got hawks that watch over me wherever I go. Okay, I jokingly say when people want to, show up where I am, I say follow the hawks. Well, one day a guy counted. He says I had 7 hawks that were guiding us all the way to you to where you are. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't surprise me. When I go to properties, I mean, I've been to a couple where I wasn't properly prepared, and one in particular, this hawk was up above, circling and screeching away. My wife says to me, she goes, "You paying attention to that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I better, right?" And I didn't understand what that hawk was trying to tell me until we stepped over the threshold and into this building that was about 350 years old, this old farmhouse. Okay. And I'm talking old farmhouse, 7-foot ceilings, so on and so on. Okay. And as soon as we crossed that threshold, my wife went, "Oh, there is something here." And I could see these things moving, and she could feel the darkness. She could feel how evil this one particular entity really was. I'm not a great sense of seeing what is and isn't evil. I kind of, my wife's really good at it. Other people are good at it. I don't really pay much attention. I kind of just do what I'm supposed to do. And to me, I see them in certain ways. It tells me, gives me a sense of what they are. But it takes me time to acclimate, if you will. You know, but that's kind of what I mean by listen to nature, right? Listen to the earth. There was a hawk warning me. Okay, and hindsight's easy, right? Now, if I would have written it down like I do in my job, my dream journal, okay, I would have been looking at it and say, all right, so that hawk is trying to tell me something. We crossed the threshold. Great. It's a chunk of darkness in here. Now, the crazy part of that particular house, we were only there because my wife's company was looking at buying the property for development. Okay, that's the only reason we were there. I wasn't there to expect to walk in on, you know, a dark entity. Right. So I was woefully unprepared. But again, I protect myself no matter where I go. If I'd have known what I was walking into, I would have added a more protection. Okay. Now, when we backed out of this place, one of the old ladies that was part of the family clan comes over, and I said to her, "Hey, who's murdered in the house?" Oh my God, did she turn white? And I mean white. Okay. No, 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 nobody was murdered. Somebody was shot, but they weren't murdered. I laughed. I go, "Oh, okay. Tell the spirit the difference. Good luck with that."
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Again, you know, I didn't know I was going to say that. It just came out. Right. I didn't know that. Now, when my wife and I were at an event in Missouri, a veterans event, we were driving back and it was getting late and we were going to try to make so much road distance. I said, listen, man, I'm tired. You know, it's 9 o'clock at night, late for old guys like me. Right. So she found us this hotel, right. And it turned out to be a less than, it wasn't a 4-star Holiday Inn. I'll tell you that. All right.
Yeah.
So when we opened the door to this room, oh my God, the presence in there was insane. And I'm going to cut to the chase. My wife and I didn't even bother getting undressed. Kicked our shoes off and said, it's going to be a long night. Let's just try to get some sleep. So we're lying next to each other on top of the covers, fully dressed. Okay. And I'm holding her hand and I'm surrounding us in light. And as soon as I click the light off, the electrical light, murder, 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 murder. It looked like a bubble storm just popping up in my head and the words, and I'm hearing this. And every hour on the hour, my wife would wake up and say, I'm dreaming about this guy's murder. Would you tell him to stop? I'm like, I'm trying, baby, I'm trying. Okay, but he and others hounded us until, you know, it's 4:30 in the morning. I couldn't take it anymore, got up, and we kind of went on. They wanted me to solve the murder. Okay, well, I'm not going to tell you where it is, but, you know, I don't have the time or the interest. You know, I wanted to take a nap, but you never know what you're going to walk into. And I would have really appreciated it if a night owl would have warned me that I was going to walk into that like the hawk did on a different property, you know? So,
Yeah.
anyway.
So in that instance, there was, would you say it was a spirit left in the room of the victim of this murder?
A lot of spirits, a lot of spirits. There was a lot of
there
spirits
was
there. You know, I can see 3 of them right now, you know? So when I talk about this stuff, you know, I can see what was happening. And if I spend too much time, you know, kind of connecting to it, I can see more and more and more, you know, and I'm certain I could solve the murder, you know, just nobody's asked me to do it. And I'm not driving back halfway across the country to solve some murder of somebody I wasn't asked to do other than the ghost in the hotel. Right.
So he was murdered, just one soul, whatever, I'm just gonna use for example, would have been murdered in the room. Did he not pass on to like say heaven?
I'm going to say no. Okay. Because I'm trying to tell you is I put up my protection. I said, I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, you know, I was intentionally trying to limit what I knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't one murder. Okay.
Yeah.
There wasn't one murder. There's at least 3. Okay. But the, you know, there was one spirit that was, you know, begging me and fighting with me pleading with me to, you know, solve his murder.
So why do you think they stay back then? Is it for the, you know, they hear the line, they have unfinished business? Is there truth to that?
Yes.
Or does everybody that die in those circumstances do they hold themselves back, or
No.
do some of them pass on and
No.
go completely? Do you know what the difference would be as to why they do one or the other?
So it's about will and intent. Okay. Great Spirit, God, baby Jesus gave us free will. Okay. I shouldn't say baby Jesus, but God gave us free will. Okay. Okay. So you have the freedom, you know, to either move on or not. And the spirit world can't interfere with that. They can show you the light, they can encourage you. Okay. But more times than not, it takes somebody with boots on the ground, somebody living, to be a conduit to help a ghost, a spirit, move on. Now, think about it like this. If you're running a marathon and you were at Boston when this Boston bomber blew up this, whatever the hell he is, he blew up, right? Let's just say for you know, argument's sake, that bomb killed one of the runners. Okay, and if they did, and I don't remember, I apologize. Okay, I don't remember if anybody was actually killed or not. That was a runner. You understand where I'm going with this? Okay.
Yeah.
You're still running. And remember what I said about your spirit leaving the body when trauma happens? Okay, your spirit is trying to protect itself from you. Okay. So your spirit and your intent, right? Your will is running. You're in that marathon and you're heading for the finish line. Okay. So all you're thinking about is, and then boom, you never hear the boom. You're just dead. right?
Mhm.
Your spirit is just going and going and going, okay? Trauma, if you die by trauma, again, your spirit will separate from your body. Whether or not your soul in the afterlife collects all of you or not is a different story, okay? Again, you don't hear a lot of people saying, my soul is stuck here, okay? When ghosts or spirits are, stuck, from my experience, they tend to have a piece of their soul still with them, okay? And the trick is to get them to overcome whatever their reluctance is and, go to the light. And here's where, people that get, wrapped up in faith and, the naysayers, right? If you don't do certain things, you go into hell, or, you scare the crap out of people so that they'll, do what you want them to do, right? The power side of religion, which is what I
Mhm.
don't like, right?
Mhm.
So if you have these beliefs that if all this does or doesn't happen, you're not going to wherever it is you're supposed to go, then why would you want to go? Why would you want to go and be judged? Okay, so you have your free will, and as a spirit, you realize I have free will. I ain't going. I ain't going. And it sometimes is literally that simple. I'm gonna give you an example. Um, I can't use names, and I got to be careful how I say this, okay? Because a lot of the stuff I do is, it's done in confidence. So this couple had been together for decades, probably more than 6 decades. And this elderly woman got up, her husband is first stages of dementia, I mean, these folks are old, but the wife was in relatively good shape. Okay. So they were planning for his demise and, so on and so on, but he was probably going to live another year. She gets up that morning and just falls down the stairs, dead, dead at the bottom of the stairs. Her spirit stayed right there, would not move. Okay. Her guides, her family, were trying to get her to come. She wouldn't move. She would not move. She would not leave that spot until her husband died. 9 months later, her husband died.
Mhm.
When he died, she went with him. And the overall sense was pure sadness. Okay. She wasn't angry. It was, if you've ever physically touched sadness, if you physically touched sadness, you'd understand what I'm trying to say to you. Okay. I had to plug this thing in. Sorry about that.
All good.
Anyway, that woman spent, short of a year, 9 months, I think it was, until her husband passed away, and then she was happy, and all that unhappiness, that sadness, gone. Okay, just
Mhm.
evaporated with her.
Yeah. She was almost in mourning in the realm she was in, or I guess waiting for her husband.
Nope, she sad.
No.
No
Sad.
mourning.
Yeah.
No, I'm telling you what she was giving
Yeah.
off was pure
Yeah.
sadness. Okay, no mourning. Right.
Yeah. So you also do, I guess you want to call it work, or you're also a medium, and these spirits can communicate through you. Would you say? Is that a way to describe it?
Yes.
Um. So
Yeah, they're the
how
ones
do
that
you?
told me that you see spirits and you don't know it.
It's interesting.
It is
If
for
when
you.
you do, yeah, this is all very interesting for me. When you do that, when you, I guess, open yourself up to being a medium, how do you prevent yourself if you're sitting with a family that says, I want to talk to my loved one? I mean, if you do
I
those
don't.
kinds of things, you don't. Okay, so how do you do your work as a medium? What happens?
So the term medium, all right, if you kind of look at it, empath, psychic, medium, right? An empath, you can feel other people's energies and so on. A
Mhm.
psychic can kind of communicate with the spirit world. A medium can hear, sense, feel, know, okay, the spirit world. Okay. I kind of, those words are words that help people understand so they can get a grip on what I am. All right.
Mhm.
But, you know, I guess I could say it like this: in 2025, I only one time did I do what you just said. Okay,
Mhm.
and the only reason for that is I knew the family, and I knew the ghost. Okay, And the ghost was coming to me and telling me things that, you know, needed to be said. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I don't typically, I don't typically kind of just pass messages along. It's not what I do. Again, I'm the guy that you call when you know, when you got to get stuff out of your house or, something
Mm-hmm.
latched onto you, you know.
Yeah.
And that spirit that was talking to me, in part, was telling me that there was a trickster that was in the process of killing her granddaughter. Okay, and what do I mean by killing her? That it was taking that girl down the path of suicide, and she was close. Okay, so I sensed the urgency, and I reached out and I said, "Hey, you guys know what I do?" And they said, "Yeah." I go, "We got to talk because your mother's been hounding the crap out of me, and um, you know, we got some shit you got to deal with." And met with them a couple times, and we went and my wife and I went and cleared out that low-level demon trickster, goofy
Mm-hmm.
trickster. Wears a tuxedo and an Abe Lincoln hat, and it's kind of, to me, it's getting old because they must not, demons must not be unionized, because you think they'd pass that message around that I've seen them in this outfit a number of times. And honestly, the first time I saw him, the bastard did it, tricked me, and that's risky. Okay, if you do the work that I do, you better not get tricked. But that thing did trick me, and it took me about a good 5 minutes to figure it out. And my spirit guides were, I don't want to say they were laughing, but they were, I shouldn't say, shouldn't even say that. I should say, they were letting me walk down that path so I would learn the lesson. And I did. I did. So I got a lot more cautious, and that was the first time I saw a trickster dressed up as in a tuxedo and a fancy hat. It's crazy. It's crazy what they do. I keep saying it. You'd be better off dressing up as a 6 foot blonde with, some
Mm-hmm.
good features. Right? You'd
I've heard
distract
that
me at least,
description.
right?
I've heard that description from a family member that when they were younger, sleeping, they said they seen that in their room,
The
standing at
tuxedo.
the foot of their bed with a hat.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
So
hearing that more and more, especially as these books come out. You know,
yeah,
but those tricksters are dangerous. They're
yeah.
very dangerous. I call them low level
So
demons. Okay, trickster's the easiest way to say it, because when you say demon, it scares the hell out of people. You know,
yeah,
so
yeah. So my question I was gonna have is, like, I mean, there's people that get TV shows for being mediums. I mean, it seems like it's becoming more part of pop culture. The medium craze has been blowing up. If you're someone that does seek a medium that does that for money and will say that they will help you communicate with the afterlife, are you risking opening yourself up to letting bad energy into your world?
So I can't speak for other people and what they
Yeah.
do. I've never charged anybody $1 to help them spiritually. Never
Yeah.
have, never will. Just don't. Okay. I can only speak to what I am and what I do. You know,
Mm.
I've seen some healers and some, as you want to use the word, mediums. Okay,
Mhm.
I've seen them, and I do not agree with what they do at all. Okay, but they're very effective, right? So you got to kind of look at, again, go outside, look at the stars. That's how many different variations of dark energy there is out there. It's just infinite. Okay, especially when you get into things that can shapeshift or take different forms. I mean, it really can get wild. I always enjoy saying this. Go to a Gothic church built by the Templars. Okay, go walk through them and look at the stuff they had carved into stone. Okay, those things aren't just some mason's idea that pops into his head and they're laughing and say, "Let me see how spooky I can make this one." Gargoyles and such. Why don't they put gargoyles on churches? Listen,
Mhm.
gargoyles have protected my life many times. Okay, they tend, I don't want to get into it, but the gargoyles you see on a church, those aren't dark energies or entities that the Christians put on there to what? Ward off Christians, right? No,
Mhm.
they are literally from the white light side of things, looking out over the church to keep darkness away. You know, again, there's so much in life that 90 something percent of the population has wrong, right? Walk into
Mhm.
a church and you see gargoyles. Oh my God, why'd they let these dark energies in here? No, no,
Yeah.
no. They work on our side of the on our side of the aisle.
So would you say if you did contact a medium and asked to them to communicate with, say, your lost one, that you might open yourself up to a trickster coming in? How would you identify if that person communicating through the medium was a demon or a trickster and not actually a loved one?
You're talking in a hypothetical that I can't
Yeah.
answer.
Can you yourself, when voices talk to you that are past loved ones, can you tell if
Yes.
it's a trickster or legitimate? So
Yeah. So, I guess I'll start by saying this. The closest anyone will get to understanding the true Native American belief is about 1%. Okay. 99% of what true Native American healers, holy men, sage, or shaman do, or what they can do, will never be revealed. Okay, it just won't. Right? So keep that in mind. Right? What I tell people is very simple. Stand in the light of Christ. When they ask me, what's your first line of defense? Standing in the light of Christ. Period. I am surrounded by the love and light of Jesus Christ. Right? And from there, I build out layers of protection. So I put up enough protection so that darkness can't get to me. And I have spirit guides around me and angels that protect me against darkness. Now, does that mean I've never had attachments? Nope. I've had crap attached to me. And it taught me the lessons of how to, protect myself. Right? It's like anything else. You learn so much by your failures so much more from your failures than you do by your successes. Right? So I've had darkness attached to me, dealt with it and gotten rid of it. Some of it was stuck for periods of time. But once I really, took on my role as a seasoned holy man, on my path to becoming a seasoned holy man, I learned how to protect myself. So to directly answer your question, I believe that every person out there should surround themselves in white light or whatever they believe in on the positive side of the scales all day, every day. And I don't mean you walk around singing kumbaya to keep yourself safe. Someone like me sometimes will have to clear myself a couple times a day, right? And depending on how much spiritual warfare you get into, depends on how much more work you have to do. But to the average person, you want to talk to somebody in the spirit world. If the person doing the communicating, knows what they're doing, they're susceptible because they're the ones opening themselves up. That would be, the first rule. Second rule is, you get around anybody that's playing in the spirit world, darkness doesn't give a shit. They don't care who invited them in. They'll jump on anything, right?
So yeah, we're talking a lot about the dark energy and what that can manifest. So if you're someone that tries to surround themselves with positivity and light, and you're a good Christian and you pray often, how can that manifest itself in positive ways, or does it?
I'm going to say the answer is yes. I don't know how to expand upon it.
So how does that look? I mean, you say that, that girl you might get involved in some dark things in life and go down a dark path, get depressed, suicidal, maybe addicted to drugs. I guess that the opposite would be that you stay out of that. You stay positive and you surround yourself with good people. That's how that would manifest, you'd say?
Yes.
Typically. I mean, this is a broad brush, but...
Yeah, but to lock it down, if you're doing something daily to practice the white light side of things, right? You're inviting in positive energy, inviting in good stuff. Okay?
Yeah.
Right? If you don't, then you're just a fish in a bait bowl. Okay? You can go through life and nothing happens to you. Or a shark will swallow you.
Yeah. So when you got back in touch with your Native American roots and became, what's your title? Sorry, you're a healer, or like you went through some training, and if you would call it training as a Native American healer, what was that journey like? How did you progress through that? Or is that?
So my path is nothing like anything you'd understand. And I don't mean that, when I say that, I don't mean to say that in an insulting way. Okay. Yep. You're either born with what I can do or you're not, right? Granddaughter Crow from the Navajo Reservation, AKA Dr. Joy Gray, she spent roughly a decade or two at the highest corporate levels with a master's degree or doctorate in leadership, Okay. So she spent her whole life heading down that road, and then took a hard right and went into back to her Native American roots, and is one of the most amazing medicine women, shaman, spiritual advisors I've ever bumped into. She's a brilliant lady. Her latest book, Shamanism and Your Shadow, is a phenomenal piece of information on you know on getting a handle on a step that I had to take. Okay, when I read that book, it helped me move myself further downfield, downrange. All right, because shadow work is, it's kind of looking in at yourself, and the more you can look in and figure out your authentic self and bring that to bear, the closer you're going to move towards the white light, or towards white light. Okay, because your authentic self is your highest and best. It's as close to your soul as you're going to get in this lifetime. Okay, so she does a phenomenal job of coaching people and teaching people about that piece of things, that piece. But there's when people say, what did you have to do, there is a lot to it. Okay, but I was born a Hyoka. What's a Hyoka? The simplest way to say it, it's a a sacred clown, or a court gesture, someone who'll ride through the village on a horse backwards. Okay, so that's part of what I am. But I've been that way my whole life, just like seeing ghosts and all this stuff. I've been this way my whole life. The healing piece, again, that's where I go to being a hollow bone, right? I, I imagine if you could truly heal somebody, if you could walk up, put your hand on somebody, and you heal their cold or their cancer, right? Would you want that responsibility?
Oh man, I need some time to think about that. You just jump and say, yes, I would. But I mean, obviously it's opening yourself up to a lot. So that's a big question.
Yeah, smart answer. Okay.
Yeah.
So here's what I tell people. Listen, I'm a hollow bone. Okay. I can connect you with the spirit world, a hollow bone, right? Move that spirit, those angels through me to you. And then it's between you and God. Okay. If you want to be healed, again, it's not up to me. Right? I can bring the forces to bear. I can make the introductions. I can do certain things. Okay. But it's up to you and God, Great Spirit, whatever you believe in, on whether or not you're going to heal. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then people say to me, well, Western medicine, blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, if your leg gets cut off, don't call me. Go to a trauma center. Okay, they're the ones that are going to be able to sew it on or patch up. I'm not. Okay, right? But if you have other ailments, right? Chief Fool's Crow lived to be 99 years old. I've read his books a couple of times. He had some guy come in and tell his story. In the last book, he wouldn't allow it to be published until after he passed on, until after he was dead. He stopped healing people, all right, when he was, I think, 95, just had enough of it, right, and kind of walked away. But he couldn't heal himself. He had 3 heart attacks, kidney stones, surgeries. So if a world-renowned, in my opinion, healer, right, Chief Fool's Crow from the Lakota Nation, if he couldn't stop himself from having a heart attack, how is he a healer? Right? Same thing he says. He's a hollow bone, or he was a hollow bone. He can make the connections. He can bring things in. If the spirit world says, listen, go find these roots or these leaves and make a tea and give it to the person, right? And he worked very specifically. He had a couple of 100 different spirits that he interacted with, and his books are fascinating. And I learned a lot from reading them. I also learned a lot that isn't said in those books, and I can hear it in his words, and it feels like I can connect with his spirit, not his soul, but his spirit, and help get answers to what he was telling the author, but he wasn't putting it in words that a normal person would be able to understand. So, there's a lot to it. It's a lot of work. Okay. People think that, you just get up in the morning and do like that, the Long Island medium, a great lady, right? It's funny as hell.
Yeah.
She goes to the grocery
exactly
store and, starts telling you about your your grandparents and and so on, right? Listen,
Hmm.
I've seen some pretty wild shit in grocery stores, including portals. You know, I mean, and sometimes it's so overwhelming that I have to leave. You know, Terry, my wife said to me once she had to yank me a handful of times because I was stuck in the produce section watching this thing spiraling. All right, and it was I think she said 5 minutes, but it could have been longer. All right, and I can get caught in those gazes where I'm kind of, I don't want to say having out of body, but my mind is really trying to connect and figure out what I'm seeing.
So, do you think the portals are? I mean, you're probably going to say there's multiple different types and different things that can come through, but would it be um, connections to the malevolent world, like demons or spirits and ghosts, or is there also portals for like wormholes? For
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about
extraterrestrials? And
that.
no, no, not going to touch on that. So that's interesting. And the reason is there a reason why? Can you say the reason why you won't talk about it?
So yes, there's a reason.
Okay. Okay. Um, interesting. But there, would you say there's different types for different
So that's all
things?
I'm going to say. Okay. And
Okay.
if you want your computer to blow up right in front of you, keep talking down that path. You won't be
Okay.
the first person that's had their electronics explode when they start going down a path that I've said, we're not going there.
That's fascinating.
Remember what I
So,
said to you. 95% or 99% of what Native Americans know will never be known to the Wasichu, the white man,
yeah.
the
Yeah.
settlers, whatever words you want to use, the
Yeah.
outside world. Okay, just won't. Right, and
Is
again,
is there
it's not up to me. I don't make those
yeah.
rules. I
Yeah.
only follow them.
So, I guess what would be the reason that they want to keep that within their culture rather than maybe bringing
Yeah, I'm
other
not going to
cultures
talk
in?
about that.
Okay.
Okay, I've
Fair.
given you, I've given you
Yeah.
what I'm allowed to give you.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, I'm not about to piss off the people that have spent a lifetime helping me. Okay,
Yeah.
just
No,
not.
I
It's
respect
it's
that.
it is a matter of respect and
Yeah.
understanding how the spirit world works.
Okay, that's good. I guess just another question. Do you believe in, I guess, extraterrestrials in the literal sense that there are little
Yes.
green men among us? Okay.
Well, I haven't seen green men, but yes, I've not only seen um, extraterrestrials, I've worked with
Yeah.
them. Okay, there's a
Right.
certain there's one in particular that is a healer, full stop.
Hmm.
Okay, and I
Hmm.
call upon him, as a hollow bone to come in and do things. Okay, and I can see
Hmm.
him as plain as I can see you right now.
Hmm.
Right,
So,
and he's
so are
he's a
they?
very cool dude. I mean, he's a very very cool dude.
Yeah. Do you think that they're just as simple as there is intelligent life on other planets outside of our solar system, or even within our solar system? Is it as simple as that, and they just have the technology to travel,
So in
or
about a
is there
year or
dimensional?
so, y'all gonna be seeing something that's gonna kind of open your eyes. Um, but you have to again go outside, look up, right,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
realize
yeah.
you're seeing what 0.5% of what's out there. Okay,
Yeah, if that.
again,
I
how
mean, not,
how big is infinity? How big is
yeah,
infinite?
yeah.
Right. Again, look at this.
Can't
Look at
comprehend.
what science says about the expanding, this galaxy. Right. The Big
Hmm.
Bang. Right. They thought it was
Hmm.
spiraling in, and it's not. It's expanding. So every
Hmm.
second, the universe is getting wider. Right. I
Hmm.
mean, that's a Elon Musk proven fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think there's a purpose to us being on Earth? Is
Yes.
there? I mean, when people say, "What is the
Yes.
meaning of life?" Okay, can you share it, or is that another?
Yes.
Okay, I'd love to hear that.
You're here to learn. We're all
Hmm.
here to learn and advance our soul.
Hmm. Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
don't
Do you
complicate it.
believe it? Yeah. Do you believe is there reincarnation?
Yes.
Hmm. I've heard people say that they believe that the traditional line of "go to the light" could mean that is actually the moment you're reborn again. Is that going through the light? And then that
That's
same
that's
person
that's not
said
my
that,
experience, but I won't kibosh somebody else's
yeah,
beliefs.
yeah. I heard that story that someone had an experience and that was kind of their takeaway is that you can turn around and not go to it and not be reincarnated, but if you do want to go to the light, that is a form of rebirth. And I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were
Yeah,
on
I
that.
don't.
But
I mean, listen, I've been there. So,
Yeah.
you know,
So what was your near death experience, if you don't mind me asking? Was that when you're in the military and the submarine incidents
well,
then?
when I was a kid, I wrote a book on, you know, on my life prior to age of, or up to the age of 14. And, it became a bestseller. I'm pretty confident it'll be a movie, but I think Hulu's gonna grab this first.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
once this series comes out or really catches on, then that's going to become a movie. I asked about it, and the spirit world said to me, you know, um, I'll be aware. Okay,
Hmm.
so that kind of tells me that I'll be dead when the movie comes out. You know,
Oh,
woohoo,
yeah. Well, that's when they seem to focus on people, is after
right,
they've passed. It sadly.
right.
So that, I mean, I'm just gonna. Did you have a pretty rough childhood, I guess, leading up to the age of 14? And
Yeah. So when I wrote the book, as I like to say, I've been with my wife for 50 years. Never said anything about my childhood. And when the book was published, I handed it to her, and she sat down and read it, and didn't talk to me for a
mm,
period of time. And when she could finally start talking to me, she was crying. You know, and she said to me, "You weren't abused. You were tortured."
mm-hmm,
I had to think about that. You know,
mm-hmm,
yeah, she was right. Yeah, I spent a little over 10 years being tortured,
mm-hmm,
and I write it in plain language in the book. Um,
mm-hmm,
but I had to water some things down because people really wouldn't.
mm-hmm,
People having a hard time believing the book.
mm-hmm,
Okay, until you read some of the reviews where people that grew up with me knew about some of this stuff. Okay,
mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
more people came out of the woodwork to confirm my childhood after the book came out than any other
Struck
time in my life.
curiosity.
You know, so
Do you find that writing the book was therapeutic for you and maybe helped you?
yeah,
I don't want to say heal, but just
yeah.
cope.
This is where I'm on my kick of look, you got to tell your story.
Yeah.
Especially veterans. Anybody that suffered trauma, you got to tell your story. Okay, you got to, because it's not only helpful for you, but it helps you move your soul forward and cleanse your spirit and so on. You just
Mm-hmm.
need to get it out so it's no longer baggage in your weighing on your lifetime here.
Mm-hmm. So then after 14, you joined the military at 17, went right into the Navy.
I did. We gotta kind of start wrapping this up here, Logan.
That
But I
sounds
was,
good. You're a very interesting man.
I know,
Fascinating conversation. I'm
I
definitely going
know.
to follow up on your books. Anything else you're working on that's coming up? Is there a place people should go to check you out and check your work out?
Yeah, I used to have the website and all that crap. I'm fully retired now, so I don't feel like dealing with all
Okay.
that. I got a Facebook page. I've got some other
Yeah.
social accounts, but I don't flaunt those too much. But Facebook, you can hit me up. My email is in my books, and you've got it somewhere, so they can reach out to
Yeah.
you, and you can connect them with me. But email is the easiest way, or Facebook, right? D Paul
Yeah.
or D Paul Fleming, one or the other on Facebook. I got a pile of followers and
Yeah.
friends and so on.
Books are available wherever you can get books, I'm sure.
Yeah, I usually just say go to Amazon. It's the simplest. If you go Barnes and
Yeah.
Normal, Barnes and Noble, when you buy it online, I only get like 50 cents a book. So
Yeah.
go to Amazon,
Yeah.
make a little more money, right?
Yeah. Well, I certainly appreciate you coming on. It's been interesting. I could talk to you for hours. I mean, I could just dive into all facets of your life, honestly. But like you say, we're limited on time here, so maybe I'll reach out later down the road
Happy
and
to
we'll
come
have another
back on. Just my
conversation.
dinner's waiting, so gotta get going.
Absolutely. I'm going to read your books and then I'll reach out.
It's great talking with you, Logan.
You too. Take care.